welcome to Lines on the Page, Season 2, Episode 6, Inking 101. Now, uh, you're probably wondering why am I doing this so early in the morning and not at night, and that is just because they just happen to be Father's Day. Before you ask, no, I don't have kids, but I am going to be spending tonight with my dad. So I just figured let's scoot this up to the morning, have this done and out of the way, and then I can do what I need to uh, regarding having dinner with dad later tonight. So, all that being said, we are going to do some quick housekeeping because this stuff has to be done. And I'm sorry if it annoys people, but uh, we have to do it. And it's fun. And I like doing it too. Haven Comics is located at 1871 Slaughter Road, Suite F, and Madison, Alabama, which are today's operation, or sorry, hours of operation, I should say, is going to be starting at noon CST through 5 p.m. CST. So be sure to stop by the store, pick up some comics. If you have stuff in your pull box, please come and get that as well. Um, and I hope that I see you today. And please remember to like and subscribe, specifically this video, any other video that we happen to do when we happen to go live. Trust us, it does help us. And, you know, we do these things because we love doing them. We're not just doing them just pass the time. We love doing this stuff. And we hope that you guys can see that as well. So, not just saying that just to say it, but every like, subscription, clicking the bell notification, commenting, sharing it, what have you, all that stuff helps us out immensely. And we want other people to see too who might not have ever seen any of these shows before. And last but not least, please, you can find me on social media through my link tree, or you can just type in the search bar tpriceartworks, and that is where you can find me. And I'm going to have this scrolling down the bottom throughout the entire show. Which, by the way, if you guys do not know, which I'm hoping that you do, started a newsletter. It's really technically a once a month newsletter, but it's through my Substack. It's completely free to sign up. I don't bombard people with, endless, pointless newsletters or anything like that. It's just this is what's happening in the month. If something should arise at the last minute, such as being asked for an event or an exclusive print I'm going to be putting out, or a soon-to-be Kickstarter project that will be happening in the near future, you guys will be the first to know. So please, if you don't know that I have a Substack, I do have one. Please sign up for that newsletter, and helps me out a lot. All that being said, inking 101. So there is a quote from, I believe it's Chasing Amy, where it's inkers are the best tracers. I think that's the joke that uh, what's his name? Kevin. Oh, I can't believe I forgot his last name. He used to be big, now he's not. Anyways, that was the on running joke and often quoted line from that movie, at least from Tots more than anyone else in the store. But there is a monicum of truth to that. But some of the best thinkers in the world are not tracers. These guys are able to see a penciled piece, and they're able to not only attenuate but also elevate the piece as well, putting in their own spin to stuff. Now, there is a book that I will highly recommend, and I'm about to show the cover of it, and it is The Art of Comic Book Inking. And I believe this is the third edition of that book. I want to say there's like a fourth one that's already out. I want to say that it's currently on sale on Amazon, so please check it out over there. Um, it's a great book. This book has opened my eyes immensely in terms of things that I didn't realize that I was doing that were kind of wrong, that probably should have been pointed out. And just being able to see all these different inkers showing all their different takes on the same piece of work is eye opening. It really is. Now, there are very, I don't want to say very few, but when you look at comics as a whole, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be seeing a separate inker from the penciler. And it doesn't matter if it's traditional inking or digital inking, there tends to be 9 times out of 10 within American comics, a separate inker from the penciler. And the concept of both the penciler also being the inker and it's just as strong as the pencils is becoming fewer and fewer. And on the flip side, it also comes more and more because it really depends on what it is that you're looking at, what it is that you're reading often. Generally, sometimes within manga, you're going to typically have whoever it is that's doing the art is also doing the inks, but there is some caveats to that. They do technically have, depending on the series, they do have like a room of assistants that also help out with like backgrounds, mechanical things, so on and so forth. But that's a whole separate subject altogether. But I highly recommend this book. And I'm going to be showing off a couple of different things that I use. Now, the two things that I won't be using today specifically, the first one is brush, and that's just because within this piece, because it's so small, I really don't need to be using a brush, but I will be using a brush pen. There is a bit of a difference between the two, uh, despite the minor technicality of it, but I won't be using brush. And the other is nib. I have never used nib pens before in my life. Now, technically, this Tombow Food Senke, which by the way, I am not sponsored by any of these companies whatsoever that I'm using. I just like the products. So we'll put that down as a caveat. Um, Technically, this Tombow Food Senke is technically considered both a nib pen and a brush pen at the same time, but it's like plastic. It's not metal. Um, and there's companies like the Leader that make them. There's another company called Hunt that also makes them, and I know that Hunt tends to be an industry standard, at least within American comics. Can't say for sure regarding European comics. In manga, I know that the Leader is a big company with that, and there's a couple different nibs within that, such as the G Pen, the wow, I just now blanked out. But there's two others. One of them starts with an S, and the other starts with, I believe, it's either an H or a K. I can't remember. But all that aside, I'm not using those. What I do like to use a lot are, as you can obviously tell, um, are technical pens and pigment microns tend to be the ones that I like using the most. I've experimented with other companies, but I tend to come back to these. Part of it's a price point, and the other part is just the ease of being able to get multiples of the same type. Now there are other companies like Faber Castell. I know that, um, or I have seen within the often Terry Dodson using them a lot. I've tried using them, and I think it's something with the humidity within the South that they just do not work as well as they should on an everyday rotation. I really don't have that problem with the microns. So, of course, Copic has them as well. They call them the multi-liners, and there's another company called Repeatograph, who are technically the originators of the technical pen. However, Repeatographs kind of operate just a little bit different, um, but they're also quite expensive, especially getting a set of that stuff. Um, and they are refillable. So there is that to consider. Think of it like a car. You know, car is obviously going to be the most expensive thing, but the only thing that you're going to be putting into it is gas. However much you travel with it, so pens no differently. And same thing with alcohol markers as well. But yes, aside from the markers, I like using Tombow. Now, technically, you can say that these two are technical in a sense. Your lines are going to be pretty consistent. There's not going to be a lot of fluidity between the difference of line, which is why uh, with these, they come in various different sizes. So the bigger the number it goes, the thicker the line that it's going to be. And the thickest one that I use is a 10, and the next thickest would be a 5. And depending on what it is that I'm using, I may swap between those two. I like using the Tombow for a lot of outline stuff, is just because you do have a typical thickness with it, but you can also get some fluidity within the line as well, depending on how much you press into it. So that being said, we'll be moving to the other thing I like using for brush pens. Now, this is a Pentel Fude, specifically the FP5M. Looking at this thing, it's a bit worn from a lot of use. This thing is kind of cool because, yeah, you can technically refill them. I've never personally had to, and that's just because after the use and abuse of this particular type of pen, I like just buying a whole new one in general. But um, this is interesting because all you have to do is just squeeze it and you get the amount of ink that you need in here, which goes down into the brush. And the other product that Pentel puts out, which is the pocket brush pen. This one is nice because you can travel with it. If you unscrew this part, you've got the refillable capsules to put in here, and you'll know when you're going low with this. It doesn't house as much ink compared to this, but on the plus side, you can get a lot of these as far as just the capsules are concerned. And it's fun to have, especially when you're traveling. Next up, Sharpie. Find them anywhere. I know a lot of people like using the bullet pen or the bullet tips, I should say. I like using the chisel end. And the reason I like using chisel end is just because I'm able to get a consistent uh, bold line all the way across. And because it's chisel, I can move the tip around depending on how I want to in order to cover a much bigger area. Now, the biggest difference between using these pens and this, as far as just over time when it dries, is that Sharpie will tend to have a little bit of a bluish brown kind of tint, especially over time. And you'll see that, especially if it's been like sitting out in the sun. Whereas using India ink or matte ink or acrylic ink will tend to be a little bit closer to a fuller black. You might get a little bit of a blue tint, but that's only if it just has to be the sun. And it looks like we've got some comments here. Hey, Paul, looks like you might be the only one here this morning, and that's totally fine because typically I do this show at night. Just because it's Father's Day, I'm doing it this morning. Thank you for stopping by. And of course, white ink. White ink is actually a lot more intuitive than you actually think, and you can use it for two different reasons. One is for correcting lines, and the other is to create effects. And I like making the argument that the eraser is actually my favorite tool because it actually is. Yes, you can use it to erase stuff, but on the opposite end of the coin, you can also create effects with an eraser as well. White ink is no different. I like going back and forth between Posca, just for bigger areas, and a Uniball Signo for finer lines. Now, the reason I choose a Signo over the Jelly Roll is because with Jelly Roll, you use that thing like 2 times and then it just craps out. The only reason that I just got so sick and tired of using them and switching over to Posca was just because a lot of people were starting to use Posca during the shutdown, and I was able to get my hands on several of them. They're a lot easier for me to get my hands on, and when I found out about the Signo, it, I would say, revitalized my interest in using finer lines for white instead of using a brush. So, all that being said, we are going to go straight over to the board. As you can obviously tell, this is a 6x9 commission that I've got to ink. And as you can obviously tell, it is Nick Fury, not just MCU Nick Fury, but also technically Ultimates Universe Nick Fury. But just for kicks and giggles, we're going to say Samuel Jackson, Nick Fury, which is totally fine. And I'm totally sorry that I'm having to go back and forth with drinking coffee, but it is the morning. So let's get to it. All right. Now, there's a couple of different things that I want to be pointing out with the butt end of this pencil. And I have gridded off the corner area. It's a bit of an homage to the Jim Steranko Nick Fury covers, where I kind of made it look like a pop art uh, spy action, sort of thing. And I wanted to do that kind of effect within the background. And as you can obviously tell, put some marks on there, which are X's. And the X's basically tell me that these areas need to be blacked out. And I have that listed in a couple different areas. And there's going to be a couple different things that I'm going to be pointing out regarding um, not just within line weight, within the character itself, in order to make things pop out, but also how I'm going to be approaching the background itself whenever I'm inking it, and the leather jacket effect that's going to be going right here as well. So first things first, while I take a sip of my coffee, we are going to start off with the interior lines, effects, whatever, inside Nick Fury's face. So first things first, go ahead and start off with the eyebrows. Now, these little lines I'm doing right here is what's known as hatching. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can do hatching. Um, and I'm going to use this side of a post-it note. And so you've got your normal hatching, which are just straight lines. They're controlled, they're going in a specific direction. And you could do different types of textural things, with these straight line hatchings. Guys like Franklin Booth were very notorious about using this type of hatching technique in their work. And I know that Frank Cho has adopted this type of hatching technique within some of his pieces as well. Now, another type of hatching is known as cross hatching, and that's where you take lines that are going in one direction and the others are crossing over that. And then depending on the gradient effect that you're wanting within your cross hatching, get a little darker. And the more that you turn it, the paper that is, will make the area darker and darker and darker. So that's another different way of doing it. You've got guys like Phil Tan who will, within their hatching, they'll do like a really condensed circle and then that, which is another different way of doing it. Then you've got guys like, I guess, some of the early Terry Dawson work and Adam Hughes work. You will have more of a triangle type that's a little bit on the thick side within the line as well. And then they'll like, at least with Terry, he'll like sneak this in. Now, Terry's wife Rachel is the one that actually does all the inks now for the covers and stuff, and Terry just does the pencils and the colors. Um, and then you've also got guys like Scott Williams, who I would say has definitely made his name not just because of all the inking that he's done with Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Will Spataccio, uh, but mainly just kind of, I guess, creating the inking style for not just the early '90s Marvel, but also '90s Image as well. His style, I know a lot of people like it, but it's not the thing that I would generally gravitate towards. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to do a perfect example of that. Um, and last but not least, there is another different way of doing, I guess, a gradient effect or hatching, and that's called smudging. And I'm going to be doing that near the ends of all of this, and I will get to that later. But it's basically where you take the ink and you just kind of smudge it out, and it creates a bit of a gradient effect. Paul says that's cool. Thank you, Paul. All right, and we're going to continue along. Towards the eyes. And we're going to be putting in a little bit of uh, highlight around lighting, if you will. And we'll probably excuse me, insinuate that a little bit more with some white ink later. Now, there are two different ways of approaching inking, and it really is boiled down to how good the person is that's doing the pencils. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of elevating and insinuating. Now, the elevation part is taking pencils that are what are known as either pencils that are really good or pencils that are very weak. I've seen both, and unfortunately, I've done both. uh, and that comes from just the growing pains of uh, learning, time, discipline, certain words that would make people just kind of faint just a little bit. Uh, quickly, I'm actually going to be swapping over to the Fusenke, or sorry, Fudenosuke, and for some, I guess, more organic lines, if you will. But in order to attenuate the lines, the pencils that you have received should be good. And by good, I mean tight. Tight in the sense that you know that how the pencilist has put it out, that the line weights are correct within the perspective of either the individual picture or the panel work if you're doing sequential art. And by sequential art, I mean comic pages. And you don't have to make any real big corrections. You don't have to fix things. Um, in post. You don't have to, I guess, make all the judgment calls. And unfortunately, there are some pencilists that are out there that just do not understand the concept of line weight. They don't understand the concept of that you should not have to rely on the inker and even the colorist, if you really sit and think about it, to do all the heavy lifting. Your pencils should be damn good. And is, I'll use this. So I did two different things within this piece, and part of it's just to use within the example of insinuating and also elevating. And the elevation part is literally you have a lot of weak pencil work and you're having to make all of the choices. So I did a little bit of both within this piece just to use as a prime example. And part of that is just because I've already put in the work regarding the light source, regarding what things I want to get blacked out, what things are going to be textural. Now, if you're going to be a person that's going to be using brush and brush pens, the only way that I can, I guess, um, well, I'm going to use this post-it note yet again because I don't want to mark on top of this. But a good exercise is just taking a random piece of paper and just use this as your warm up. And this is a pencil pocket brush that I'm using. And you just do circles. Now, the one thing about this pocket brush is that it is extremely temperamental, especially in a humid climate like the South. And so some lines are going to get a little thick, and that is thick with two C's. But within straight lines like this, with this particular pen, as you can see, gets a little wavy, and that's just because it has like a specific character. If you're trying to do things like buildings and stuff like that, especially like, you know, historical buildings or sci-fi buildings or whatever, you're going to want to use a more technical pen. So as you can see, it's consistent line with the technical pen, and of course with the brush pens, a little bit more, or even a brush. It's a little wavy, a little bit characteristic. John Bashima, whenever he would ink his own work, he would take a ruler and have his hand sitting on top of the ruler. Of course, the ruler is not like flat; it's actually up like this. And whatever the line is that he wants to do, he'll put the sorry, do it like this. He'll put tip of that right here and then move it along, and then that would be the straight line. But Mishima has also admitted the reason that he enjoys, at least within his time of doing comics, uh, the reason that he loved doing Conan the Barbarian versus when he was working on Avengers is because with Conan the Barbarian, everything is super organic, so you can get away with a lot with a brush. Versus the Avengers, where there were a lot of straight lines, there were a lot of things that had to be point to point here and there within the specifics. Things were very technical, and he tried to do the best that he could, and it was still a great run of Avengers. But all that being said, now you can equate using doesn't matter if it's a technical pen or a brush or a brush pen or a nib, but whenever you're doing, straight lines like this or curved lines or whatever, your breathing will also play in part within this, and it's no different if you were uh, at a firing range with a gun, specifically a rifle, just to be a little bit more accurate. um, One of the things that they usually teach whenever you're using like bow and arrow or with a rifle at a range is that uh, you have to control your breathing whenever you're lining up your sight, looking down towards the target, visualizing where it's going to hit. Now, of course, with snipers, they go to the nth degree with like wind speed and a little math here and there, which is why you have a separate spotter, so on and so forth. It's a whole tangent, but if you visualize how you're wanting the line to go and just breathe in and you see how weak and anemic that is versus breathing out. See that difference? So this is from when I breathed in, trying to hold my breath versus exhaling. There it is. So, all right. Now we got that part out of the way. We're going to go back with the Tombow. Now, there are some pencilists that are as equally as good with their pencils as they are with their inking. And so that, uh, so if we're going to go like super old school, um, I would argue to say that um, both John Mishima and also John Romita Sr. absolutely fantastic. Their pencils are obviously really good, but their inking as well, just fantastic. And then as you move a little bit more into the 80s, of course, you've got inkers like Klaus Janson, Joe Rubenstein, which, by the way, Rubenstein was at the Huntsville Expo this year. I wish I had time to stop by his table and pick his brain about some stuff. Did not have a chance, unfortunately. But on the flip side of the coin, also at the expo, James O'Barr, who, if you don't know who he is the creator of a little, you know, little big comic called The Crow, uh, which, by the way, I would highly recommend reading The Crow. Because if you have not done it, please do it. It's very cathartic. Uh, yes, the original '90s film it does draw a lot from the original story, but it's also very adapted to film as well. And unfortunately to say, any others that came after it just will not hold up a candle to the original story. But that is a whole other topic for another day. But when we start getting to the '80s, like I said, Claude Janson, who did a lot of work in Marvel, specifically with Frank Miller, um, fantastic inker, uh, so good. And right around the mid to late '80s, we start getting the beginnings of Adam Hughes. And if I remember correctly, I want to say Hughes inked his stuff as well as penciled it. There may have been a separate inker depending on the projects that he was working on. Uh, which at that time period, I think the only three big books that he did was Star Trek: Dead of Honor, Justice League, uh, technically Justice League International, uh, but for all intents and purposes, it was Justice League and uh, the Maze Agency, which I finally got my hands on uh, the first volume of the Maze Agency during the shutdown, and really interesting to see the growth period between uh, the projects that he was doing during that time period. And of course, you have Scott Williams coming up in the ranks since we're dealing with about 88, 89. And he's inking over Jim Lee, he's inking over Will Tascio, and I believe also Mark Silvestri as well. Um, can't confirm that, but and of course we get into 1990, and of course Scott Williams was basically the premier inker for Marvel at the time until him and Lee, Silvestri, McFarlane, Liefeld, Tascio, uh, forgot who else, of course, end up creating what we know today as Image Comics. Now, there was a couple other people uh, that were also inking their own work, like I can't remember which of the Plinis, or sorry, Peonies, was the artist with ElfQuest. I want to say it was Wendy. I'm not 100%. Anyone who happens to be out there that's like super knowledgeable about ElfQuest, please let me know which of the if it was Wendy or if it was her husband that was the artist for ElfQuest. But they also make their work as well. Now I'm using an O1 um, micron to do some of these thinner lines. Now, this is where we get into a lot of the more detailed hatching stuff, and I am going to be outlining a few areas where I'm wanting specific areas to be hatched. And so, with this part right up here, instead of going top down, it's going to be down up. And one of the things that a lot of the OG inkers are really big about are whenever you're doing hatching of any kind, it's best to have the line not come towards you, but away from you. Uh, that I say it's very situational. Uh, More times than none, yeah, sure, you are going to get that consistency, but like I said, it's a very situational thing, and it's very dependent on what it is that you're doing as well. And that could be said about a lot of stuff. Now, whenever I'm doing things like this, I usually work a couple centimeters outside of the area that's going to be, completely blacked out, and then work towards to create that gradient, that line. And there's going to be another section which is going to be right here. And again, now there's another way of doing this when it comes to lines like this. So, for instance, you would have like one area here, um, and let's say it's just curved this way just for kicks and giggles. This area get blacked out, this area get blacked out, and then you would have people that will do uh, this and that. Looks like monster teeth, but the point being is that it would create this, you know, uh, feathered hatching type of gradient, which is correct. It is a method, but again, it's also very situational. It really depends on what it is that you're trying to do and which thing that you feel like is going to be the best representation of what it is that you're working on. Now, this is where I start breaking several and it says situational. So I'm going to be swapping over to smaller pen. I'm going to be using a 003, and I'm going to be working down very short control strokes. Again, starting in this, area that's going to get blacked out. And I'm going to do it again right here. Move it this way. Now, this is where I'm going to have to go up this way. But if you're not comfortable with your inking, a good way to control the width of your line is to put a piece of paper or a piece of tape, like you can use painter's tape or you can use drafting tape as well. Just make sure it's not scotch, or else you're just going to ruin the paper. All right, there you have it. One eye patch. Yes, it is Nick Fury. So as you can obviously tell, I'm just trying to black out these shapes that want to get blacked out. Now, there is one person that's just a consummate artist. Guy just continuously just floors me every single time that I see his work. It's Brian Stelfreeze. I'm hoping to stop by and actually talk to him later this year. But just as much as he's just a fantastic human being in general, his inking is impressive. His color palette is impressive. It's definitely just one of those generational talents. And if you want to see exactly what I'm talking about, just either find him on Instagram or just type in Brian Stelfreeze in Google. You will see exactly what I'm talking about. I know that he did a lot of covers for Batman. He did a couple of noir uh, action comics of sorts for Dark Horse, or it may have been Image, called The Matador. You also had The Ride. Um, there was one other. I don't think it was executive assistant, or it may have been. I can't remember. There's a lot of guys during that time period that from the Block Noir studio that were doing a lot of stuff between Image and Dark Horse. Because you also had Tony Harris, you also had obviously Adam Hughes, the late Jason Pearson, um, Cully Hamner, uh, which Cully's just a hilarious dude, just from some of the stuff I've seen posted online. But I highly recommend looking at Cully Hamner's or Brian Stelfreeze's. Well, yeah, also Cully, but definitely with Brian, and just looking at some of the stuff that he's done, the breadth and scope of his work is just mind-boggling. Sometimes it's a lesson all in its own. Now this is where we're starting going to get into that Franklin Boost territory with the hatching. To create just a little bit of depth. All right. Stretch my fingers just a little bit. Do not ever be afraid of taking breaks. Whether it's your hands, whether it's just getting up from the seat, walk around, whatever. It's something that I think people within the comics community are starting to talk about a little bit more within the last couple of years, which is just one's physical health. Because it really is just doing this stuff, 8, 10, 12 hours in a day. It really does take a toll on one's body. So definitely take breaks. Definitely get up, stretch, go and do a walk, shake your arms, what have you. All right. So this is going to be a really interesting part. And this is the part where you can actually be a little bit messy. And it's going to be the background. Now, it is going to be a bit uniformed. If you can, I'm sure if you can tell, I think you can. But I put little X's within each section, which I'm about to go over yet again. Now, this part is one of those things that kind of gets looked over, and that is using uh, little things like negative space and just the basic understanding of gradients and values. And what I mean by that is when we look at this particular area that's going to get blacked out. So this entire area is going to be completely blacked. Now, this area right here and this area right here, which I'm going to do this just make you visualize it just a little bit more. It's going to be left completely white, and it is a highlight, but at the same time, it's also operating in a sense, kind of like negative space, but more so a highlight. Now, if it was true negative space, and like in the sense of Frank Miller's Sin City, where it's just using very simple white lines to operate and to trick your eyes into seeing the shapes, that would be, I guess, a more perfect example regarding all of this. But in the sense of what we're doing right now, it's a little bit of both in terms of just the gradient effect that we're going to be doing a little bit right here and also right here on the lapels, but creating a bit of a highlight. And this is going to be the section that's going to get blacked out as well. So it's also going to be doing double duty regarding a little bit of a negative space. And I'm going to quickly just just for the sake of the camera. Now, when I was sketching this all out, I literally used the tip of the nose as the starting point of the spiral. All right, and I'm just going to quickly erase all of this. And there's going to be some touch ups regarding this area right here and also right there. So don't worry, do not fret. Mistakes can always be fixed in analog. So don't ever think or feel like things can't be fixed. Because when it boils down to it, the ball is always in your court. All right, so we're going to be switching over real quick to the Pentel Fude. Black this area out. Now you have two choices. You can either feather this area right here, or what we're going to be doing is smudging. So what I'm going to do, let's get to about right here. I want to make this area of ink kind of thick. Then just take your finger and pull away. A little bit more, pull away. A little bit more, and pull. What this does, creates that little bit of gradient. And I'm going to be doing that basically on the ends of all of these. Now, the reason that I bordered this out is just because I wanted to have the area to where I know that the pull is going to happen. And I'm going to be doing that in a few other areas around Nick Fury. So also realize this is probably the most that I have talked this early in the morning in a couple months. Now, if you're working on like a kitchen table or whatever, uh, because as you can obviously tell, there's some of this ink on here. This is not a kitchen table. This is actually my travel drafting table that I take with me. But if you are working on a kitchen table, if you're working on a wooden table, whatever, please, 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 whenever you're inking or using markers, put a piece of paper underneath whatever it is that you're working so that you don't have these kinds of accidents. Especially if you're using, permanent markers and stuff like that. With regular ink, you can use like uh, some sort of like wet wipe uh, pledge, whatever. But definitely be careful, especially if it's not something that you own. Last thing you want to do is have to pay for damages. You can obviously tell it takes a little time, takes a little patience, but it is better to do that than to rush. Because as the old saying goes, haste makes waste, and that's why it's called the runs. Now, another thing that if you're a longtime viewer of the show, you know the reason as to why I'm wearing this slightly fingerless glove. But the reason behind it is so that I don't have graphite or ink stuck on my hand. Now, there's a couple different versions of how you can do this with regarding the glove. You can do the cheap option, which is what I do, and you can choose how often you want to machine wash it. Um, if you go to a music store of any kind that specializes in marching band stuff, you just buy the most generic uh, cotton or uh, maybe nylon polyester, whichever one that's out there. Um, I just picked up one that just happens to have a little bit of a uh, texture bottom with the finger part as well. And part of that was just because it was really the only one that they currently had in stock to replace the ones that had previously. And if you happen to be using digital art, uh, if you own a graphics tablet like a Cintiq or uh, XP Pen or Huion, uh, more times than none, they usually have one that kind of comes with. That's also a good alternative to, albeit a very expensive way of using something like that within a traditional sense. Right. Now we're on the final spiral. Oh, before I forget, so digital inking. Now, I've done some digital inking to some of my work, and there are pros and cons to it. Some of them, can definitely be a bit more obvious than others. It really just kind of depends on which side of the coin do you feel more comfortable doing as an inker, as a creative. Um, I know that Clayton Henry uh, digitally inks all of his stuff. Also, another fantastic artist. If you have not checked out his work, definitely recommend. He primarily uses Procreate. I use Clip Studio Paint, and the only times that I really ever do any sort of digital inking is really more so in post than anything else. And it's just correcting the levels. And if I feel like there's something a bit amiss, I just fix the part up. Or if there is a section where I feel like I just do not know how to best create a specific type of effect. I know it's possible to do it. Traditionally, I just don't have the know how to do it, but I know that I've got the brush effect to do it digitally, then I will do that effect in post. Now, the cons that I find in digital linking is the fact that sometimes the lines are just a little too perfect. Uh, the lines are, I guess, not as organic as if you were using uh, pens or just ink in general, I should say. And of course, depending on the DPI and all that, sometimes you can see some artifacts, but it's so minute uh, that at the end of the day, the everyday person is not going to see it unless it's glaringly obvious. There's no way you can not unsee it. Uh, Other pros with digital inking, you don't have to deal with uh, humidity with ink. You're doing it digitally, so there is that. You don't have to deal with cleaning your brushes if you're doing a lot of brush work. Not Do not clean the end of your brush pens. Leave them exactly the way that they are. But if you're doing with a brush, like a brush, yeah, you don't have to worry about that if you're inking digitally. You can take it anywhere that you want to. Uh, whether it's your tablet or laptop, unless you've got like you're using a giant Cintiq or uh, the the giant size graphic tablets from either Huion or XP Pen, that would be a pain. Uh, Take that with you wherever. All right. Let's see. What other pros regarding digital inking? Oh, going back to the whole you don't know how to do the effect traditionally, but you can pull it off digitally. You have a multitude of, uh, you know, I hate saying brushes because that can be very open-ended terminology, but it is one that gets used a lot with digital programs, uh, brush packs, so on and so forth. But in the sense that you can customize your different types of brush packs when you're doing things digitally. So you can have whatever is stock, you can create your own custom type brushes to do different things, whether it's a texture thing, whether it's a specific line. That's really awesome. Can't really do that traditionally unless a company is making said things, or you are literally butchering your brushes and pens to create said lines. But there's also a con to it in the sense that you have so many and then you have option paralysis. Uh, but it's very situational from person to person. I am a person that does suffer from option paralysis, so there's only a few select things I will stick here and there when it comes to doing inking in post. But I like to do uh, what I call the 95-5 situation. So 95% of everything that I like to do is going to be traditional. And then that 5%, after the piece gets scanned, I can just fix something in post. I can add an effect in post. And this is regarding sequential work or if I'm working on a print. Um, Obviously, I like to do colors digitally because I'm not confident with watercolor. Copy markers, I've definitely grown confident with using them over the years, but I don't really use them often anymore, which sucks. Um, and oftentimes I have to relearn uh, which colors do that one thing that I did, 2 years ago. So I had to like create swatches uh, for everything that I've got. Definitely apologize for the shakiness of the camera today. I think I've got don't think I've screwed the arm a little bit more than I typically do, so it's a bit on the temperamental shaky side. So something that I like doing when it comes to the texture of a leather jacket is a technique called stippling, and I will get to that soon as I black out this part and this part right here. Now, stippling, done traditionally, is a very time-consuming thing, depending on how much you are doing that. Uh, there are some people that just love doing stippling, and it's therapeutic and cathartic, mainly for them. Uh, it's not a technique that I like doing on the often, but if I get the chance to use it in something, I'll do it. All right, so stippling. There's a couple different ways you can go about it. Um, and before I get to that, Paul's got a question. How long have I been an artist? The real short answer to that, it's a bit of a blanket answer. I could say all my life, but that's not been an accurate answer. So I actually grew up drawing all the time as a kid, all the way up until I was about 18 or 19. I, I basically just kind of quit doing art in the sense of this. Shortly after I graduated high school, I went to college for music in the music industry. That was my focus for about 10 years. And I did not get back into doing this until right around the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And now there was like an occasional doodle here and there, but like nothing to what I was doing growing up. And I also did not have anyone mentoring me with certain stuff. So when I got back into it, it was very much like physical rehab. There was just a lot of bad habits I didn't realize that I had. There was a lot of growing pains that I had to get out of. Thankfully, I had two different people point out my mistakes, to focus on a couple different things, and that uh, what I've learned from that, I apply over to here. And then, of course, it's just an ever going process of trying to find uh, different ways, maybe even better ways to do the same thing, um, but create whatever that effect is. It's always going to be an evolution process. All right, so stippling. A couple different ways that you can go about it. Some people just like using the one pen, but basically, stippling is taking, just dabbing down dots. And then the closer that you put these dots together, uh, the darker the mass. And then, of course, the further away, the more the gradient. Now, you can do stippling with a couple different multi-liners. Is probably going to be your best way of doing it, using bigger ones for your bigger dots, little ones for your little dots, and creating that gradient effect, but like I said, it's a very time consuming process. Unless you are that person that loves doing it, then you're going to love doing it. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but you do get a particular effect. I only using it sparingly. Um, that's just me. Everyone's gauge of interest is going to be different from other people. I like using stippling when it comes to leather jacket to create that kind of that effect that a leather jacket gets when it's something that has been in use for a while. So what I do is take my thickest pen, which is a 10. For those that don't happen to have a 10, an 8 will be a perfect one to use, or an 08, I should say, if you're using microns. And I'm just going to go near the edge of the blacked area. Now, there's probably some art major that's out there that's going to be like, oh, that's not the correct technique. Within a classical sense, yes, you're probably right. But in the sense that with comics and comic art, um, it's going to be different from person to person. Now, like I said, I'm using the thickest pen near the black, and then I will gauge down the thickness probably to an 0.5. Another alternative to stippling is actually using an airbrush. If you're into that sort of thing. Uh, and let's see, what's another alternative? Obviously, hatching, but it doesn't create that same kind of effect like an old leather jacket I would do. Uh, it would probably come off like a different type of material, but uh, this is what I like using regarding this. So using the 10 is done, dropping down to no 05. As you can see, lighter dots, spacing it out just a little bit more. And then I'm going to drop it down yet again. This is where you have to be extremely careful with these really tiny multi-liners. So this being a 005, because if you press down too hard on these, you'll break uh, the tip. And use this very sparingly. Now we're going to be doing the inverse of that, and we'll be using some white ink. And I like to make sure on a scrap piece of paper it's got some ink flow to it, and it does. All right, as you can obviously tell with the stippling with the white ink, along with the black, again, creates that effect. Now, I'm going to be using the white ink, and I'm going to go over a couple different lines right here, specifically with the beard, to give off the effect that there's a little bit of growth that's coming out, which I'll probably end up going back over some of this with some black just to fix it up a little bit more. Like I was saying earlier, with the highlight with the white, just dab a dot right there. Get the inked, there we go, boom, and you drop a tiny little one right there. And let's see. All right. Now, this part is what I'm going to call the cleanup phase. And this is basically just kind of going over a couple different lines regarding the outside line weight. Now, if you are getting into inking, you like inking other people's work, they would have already have done the correct line weights for you. So by that, I mean everything that's done in pencil, the line weights are exactly what they need to be. So all you have to do is just follow the guides. or what I should say, guides in the sense of that's how the pencil is dictating. If for a second, or there may have been something that had been overlooked, all you just have to do is just insinuate that area or just lightly fix it. Now, another thing to be careful with when inking, let the ink dry before you erase. If a certain area does not look like it has been, um, it doesn't look like it, fell onto this trap as well. So, if the ink is not dry and you start erasing over it, either your eraser will pick up the ink or it will smudge it in an area that you don't want it to go in, and it can ruin it, and you have to spend time correcting it, either traditionally or in post, or it might be so bad that you can't fix it. And when you try to fix it, it makes the problem worse. And so you have to do the whole thing all over again. So make sure that the ink is dry before you start erasing anything. There it is. I think, considering that this is the first time that I've ever drawn Nick Fury, did a pretty good job of this. I'm also quite happy that I can finally put this bucket list character uh, scratched off from my sheet. All right, all right, all right. Here we are, one Nick Fury from the MCU. And of course, as always, sign your work. All right. Ah, stay for 6 by 9. We got this done within what was a 2 hour span? Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad. It's a new record for this show. Uh, favorite Mabel character. Mabel from Gravity Falls, yes. But I think what he meant was favorite Marvel character. As of right now, let's see. Uh, I technically have two. The first one is just because she kind of gets written off as real character, but she's been making a few more appearances as of late within Moon Knight and also with Blood Hunt, and that is Tigra. I've always liked the character. I want to say her first appearance was in West Coast Avengers, I believe. I think. Um, Josh or Alan, if you're watching this, they would definitely have the correct history regarding first appearance of that character. Even Aaron, Aaron, if you're watching, because I know you're a Marvel historian and a nut, you can answer that. So yeah, I definitely like her. And the other character that I like within Marvel is it kind of goes back and forth. If we're being honest, and it's actually the design more so than the actual character, and that's Taskmaster. The reason being is that I like the concept of this guy who apparently he is just able through just one time he's able to completely copy and master a person's fighting ability. And for a time, he was a bit of a strong contender against the Avengers. Um, and the reason that I kind of go back and forth between the character, because like I said, visually he's very interesting. His ability is very interesting, but um, I'm not a fan of, uh, I guess, people worshiping villains, basically. I'm not a real big fan of that, but he is a character that I've definitely found to be interesting, at least within the visual aspect, more so than an actual persona aspect. Whereas with Tigra, I enjoy both the visual and the persona of her character. Um, Even though there's been several writers that have kind of made her into a bit of a joke, not a big fan of that. But um, I'm kind of glad that she's been getting a little bit more respect and usage, not just within Moon Knight, but also in Blood Hunt as well. Which I have not caught up with Blood Hunt yet, so no spoilers, please. I tend to focus, I guess, now that I've gotten older, I've been focusing a lot more with uh, not just within independent characters, but I guess more with DC as I've gotten older. I could just write everything off and be like, yeah, Batman. Uh, but in reality, my two favorite characters from DC, uh, the obvious answer is Wonder Woman. I've always found her to be a really interesting character. The Gail Simone run in the early 2000s was fantastic. The Who's the other writer from that same era? Uh, they share the same artist, Terry Dodson, but once it was, I don't remember if it was Kelly Thompson or if it was someone else, but they also did a fantastic run. And this is where we start gaining the Agent of Peace era, um, Wonder Woman, where the only times you ever see her in her traditional outfit is when she kind of has to come out of uh, the the alter ego persona, but she kind of dresses up more like a secret agent in this, working with. It's not Steve Trevor; it's with someone else, but she basically acts as the agent of peace. I really enjoyed that run. Um, this new run with Tom King and uh, Daniel St. Pierre has been fantastic. Not just writing, but also the artwork has been fantastic. And of course, my other favorite DC character, uh, as of right now, is I've kind of been rereading uh, the Lightning Path. Uh, that it was a storyline from the early 2000s as well, with Justice League, and it focused on Red Tornado. And Red Tornado is kind of a character that I never really paid attention to, but I like the whole, I guess, Pinocchio aspects with him just wanting to try to be human. Uh, you got shades of that with Vision within the MCU, which was interesting as well because, and that's kind of always been his thing. But uh, to see Red Tornado, want to be human, and then realizing that um, no matter how hard he tries, he can't, despite the fact of him wanting to have a family. And that showdown with him and Solomon Grundy was just, it was beautiful, intense, but it was beautiful. But yeah, definitely those two characters for sure. And I might actually have a third favorite DC character. Um, no, no, I think it'll stick with just with those two as of right now. But yeah, which is funny because red is not my favorite color; it's actually green. But yeah, definitely enjoy those. I don't know. With Marvel, it's been, you know, there were some obvious ones growing up. Everyone, tends to have like their favorite X-Men character or Spidey or a Spidey character, I should say, or maybe someone in the Avengers. I did love Vision for the longest in the Avengers and Black Knight as well, which was odd because not a lot of people were really into that character growing up. For me, that is, everyone else was like, Spider-Man or Venom or Punisher or Captain America. But yeah, just visually, I thought Black Knight was really cool, and because I'm just a sucker for anything fantasy related, and of course Spidey was just kind of a given because he was like the everyday man's superhero, and which some of my favorite Spidey stories. It's not when he's going against villains. It's like the everyday struggle. I was just trying to survive, and it was so real. It's just like, yeah, sure, I can, got to get to the bank, so I can, put this deposit in, because I've got to pay my rent on time. But before I could do that, I've got to stop this busload of nuns before they fly off a bridge, sort of thing. And then by the time I finish that, the bank's closed. So it was just it was just stuff like that. I just thought was very very interesting regarding the character. But yeah, all right. So inking 101. Basically, I try to impart all the knowledge that I could possibly can as far as just the beginning side of inking within this Nick Fury piece. And like I said, this was definitely on my bucket list of characters that I've always wanted to do, and I'm so glad I got to do this commission. Which, by the way, I have opened up commissions this summer. Every little bit definitely helps me out with just certain things that I've got to do between big projects, and uh, super thankful that this will get a new home. Uh, and yeah, so if you're wanting a commission from me like this 6x9 and or 11x14, I have put up my commission prices both on Facebook and Instagram, and I believe also Twitter and Kara. So check it out there. If you have not signed up for my mailing list, please do. I have shared, I believe I did. Anytime that I do a newsletter, I make sure to share said newsletter on Facebook as well. So all you have to do is whenever you're reading it, if you have not subscribed to my newsletter, there's going to be a little area for you to put in your email address. Put it in there. It's free, totally free. There's no paywall or anything like that, but you get to hear about whatever is going on with me with this month with work. I usually like to share something that I have really been enjoying that month, and you might see some behind the scenes stuff as well. So again, signing up for my newsletter that I put out every month on Substack, it's completely free. There's no paywall whatsoever. Um, and I just want everyone to be on the same page. All that being said, we are going to end today's thing with your typical housekeeping, and that is that Haven Comics is located at 1871 Slaughter Road, Suite F in Madison, Alabama. Our store hours today is going to be from 12 p.m. CST to 5 p.m. CST. And please remember to like and subscribe. If you like this video, like it. Uh, if you like it enough that you want to share it, share it. If you like commenting on this video whenever you just happen to be watching it, leave a comment. If you like our YouTube page, please subscribe. If you like our Facebook page, please subscribe, follow it. If you want to figure out where you can find me on social media, all you have to do is type in your search bar T Price Artworks, all one word, all undercase. 9 times out of 10, you will find me there. If you don't know where you can find me on social media, just type in the URL linktree slash tpriceartworks. 9 times out of 10, you will find me there, and all the different places that you can find me on social media. With all that being said, thank you guys so much. I hope everyone happens to have a good Father's Day. Enjoy it. Spend your Sunday doing whatever. And all that being said, I will see you guys later. Have a good day.